In the pre-dawn darkness, at 6:41 local time, a formation of Ukrainian drones cuts across the Black Sea at wave-top level, roughly 50 kilometers from Novorossiysk, Russia's last functioning haven for the Black Sea Fleet. What awaits these incoming aircraft is unlike anything they've encountered. Today, Novorossiysk's defenses feature a weapon previously untested against this particular threat. And whether the attack survives hinges entirely on a choice made months earlier inside a Ukrainian factory. 19 minutes before impact, the lead drone's satellite receiver refreshes with a new position, one that's completely false. According to the screen, the aircraft sits parked on the apron at Gelendzhik Airport, 30 kilometers down the coast. In reality, it's skimming 50 meters above gray water at 160 kilometers per hour, its heading unwavering. This stretch of sea has become the most heavily jammed area on the planet. A jamming array on the headland broadcasts a counterfeit satellite signal, potent enough to overwhelm the authentic transmission, feeding every approaching drone a position that simply doesn't exist. It's comparable to someone replacing every road sign across a nation overnight. Follow them, and you'll end up in a ditch. Yet the FP-1, Firepoint's unmanned platform and the workhorse of Ukraine's strike arsenal, was engineered by designers who anticipated precisely this scenario. This aircraft navigates via inertial guidance, INS technology. It calculates every maneuver and every second of its journey independently. Satellites become irrelevant. Jamming resistance comes built in as well. The drone essentially counts its own steps through darkness. And while INS does accumulate minor errors over distance, the deviation resembles crossing your living room with the lights off. You might veer an inch or two, but you won't collide with the couch. Against a target the dimensions of a city block, such drift registers as negligible. Let them swap every sign along the coast. This drone was never reading them. Along the shoreline ahead, a Russian air defense operator manning radar for the 1,537th Anti-Aircraft Rocket Regiment sweeps his search beam across 50 kilometers of open water. Nothing appears. He leans closer to his scope anyway. Still nothing. 3 years into this drone conflict, nobody positioned on this coast accepts empty radar returns anymore. Yet they're powerless to do anything about one. Up and down the coast, additional operators stare at their own blank displays. All of them confront the same troubling realization. Something approaches, and their radar can't identify its origin. Consider what one of these drones actually comprises. Barely 2.5 meters of plywood construction and radar-absorbent material. Each unit costs $55,000, manufactured at a rate exceeding 100 daily. A single drone costs less than a new truck. Bait for interceptor missiles that individually exceed the entire swarm's value combined. Hugging the wavetops, it vanishes into two simultaneous cover layers. A turbulent sea scattering radar reflections everywhere, and the Earth's curvature itself. Anything this low stays hidden until nearly reaching shore. His radar has 400-kilometer range and can deliver missiles to whatever it detects. Yet it can't track something at 50 meters altitude. The operator isn't incompetent at his work, and honestly, the physics simply aren't cooperating this morning. Then the upper layer begins ascending. 90 more seconds pass, and the planetary curve stops shielding it. That empty scope suddenly floods with contacts. 10 minutes remaining. 25 kilometers from the harbor entrance, the high-altitude drones crest the radar horizon, and the operator's display transforms. Flickering blips solidify into distinct tracks, multiple inbound signals fragmenting across separate directions. One cluster angles toward the naval base, another toward the Shestkaris oil terminal, a third toward the Grushovia fuel depot and its 1 million tons of reserves. The air defense network activates. The battery commander possesses minutes, and the calculation looks grim. Each firing channel handles one target simultaneously. He commands a handful of channels. Imagine a telephone switchboard with 4 lines fielding 30 simultaneous calls. Then multiply the drone count appearing on his screen. Every interceptor expended on plywood represents one unavailable for the cruise missiles this system was designed to neutralize. Plus, the assault he genuinely fears hasn't even materialized yet. Throughout his career, he's trained exclusively against cruise missiles in exercises. Nobody ever prepared him to fight a lumber yard. He analyzes the formation momentarily, selects the nearest high-confidence contact, and commits. A missile tears off the coastline in a bright arc, crests hard at its apex, then plunges toward a drone skimming the swells. A supersonic interceptor diving on a wooden airframe traveling at 160 kilometers per hour. A mismatch for the books. The warhead strikes the target zone and detonates across open sea instead, hurling a towering column of spray skyward that lingers in the early light long after the drone has penetrated the mist and continued onward. The S-400, NATO designates it the SA-21 Growler, represents Russia's most advanced air defense export. Yet it just lost an argument with a 2-foot altitude gap. I have to say, this is precisely the problem this system never anticipated solving. The S-400 hunts high-altitude aircraft and ballistic missiles at extreme distance. Its proximity fuse responds to aircraft-sized signatures. Against a drone clinging to the ocean surface, it cannot distinguish the airframe from the water directly beneath it. The fuse detonated on the sea itself. Consider home security at its finest. Cameras throughout, motion sensors guarding every entrance. Except the intruder is a mouse running along the baseboard, and the sensors calibrate for a 6-foot adult. The S-400 costs $500 million and intercepts stealth fighters from 400 kilometers away, roughly the Los Angeles to Las Vegas distance. It cannot acquire a plywood airframe at 30 meters, and the man at the console knows this fact well. At his station, the picture proves maddening. The low-altitude contacts flicker through sea clutter, never remaining stable long enough for engagement. The high ones register clearly, distinctly, almost insultingly, and every one represents the swarm's expendable tier. He wins every engagement he can actually attempt, yet his screen's count keeps climbing regardless. That's the strategy entirely. A swarm distributed across 3 distinct targets means each defender fights his isolated sector, facing the threat he's least equipped to handle. Additional launches yield additional spray. For each drone the battery pursues at low altitude, 2 more clear the horizon at high altitude, and the interceptors launching from those rails cost exponentially more than the residential blocks behind them. Taxpayer money in action. Miles eastward, the first smoke column already rises. The drones that veered toward the oil installations are arriving over Shestkaris. 2 of the eastern contacts vanish as they reach the fuel depot. The operator cannot prevent either loss. Shestkaris supplies the tank farms that load Russia's export tankers. That smoke column represents wealth the Kremlin directly measures. Yet the smoke accomplishes something additional. Every minute those fuel farms burn, they discharge massive heat into the harbor sky, and the final inbound drone will encounter a significant problem because of it. Neither side recognizes this difficulty yet. The morning will present it soon. The long-range layer has engaged the wave-skimming drones. Down at sea level, they remain protected, until the next defensive system transforms that low altitude from shield into doom. 5 minutes remaining, 12 kilometers from the piers. The low-altitude drones pass inland beneath Markok Ridge, a 700-meter rock wall hanging above Novorossiysk like a raised fist. This ridge has observed harbor traffic throughout 2,000 years of dawns. This particular morning, it opens fire. A thundering stream of 30-millimeter rounds erupts from the ridge crest, tracers strobing across the waters beneath. The lead low-altitude drone enters the fire stream and disintegrates, plywood confetti scattering across the swells. The Pantsir S-1, NATO nomenclature SA-22 Greyhound, positioned upon the ridge at 700 meters above the port. That hammering sound emanates from both units combined. Twin 2A38M 30mm autocannons, positioned directly beside missile tubes, dispensing nearly 5,000 rounds per minute out to 4 kilometers horizontally and 3,000 meters vertically. The Pantsir represents more than cannons alone. It incorporates dedicated radar, plus a thermal imaging system tracking drones by engine heat. Purpose-built for exactly this low and slow target category. The entire package sits on a heavy truck platform, which explains its position atop a ridge overlooking a Navy installation. The S-400 had to thread an impossible needle, and the proximity fuse fell victim to deception. The cannon threads nothing. It hurls buckets of gravel skyward. No fuse to deceive, no minimum engagement threshold, merely lead and tremendous quantities of it. Inside the turret cab, a gunner watches his display intently. The drone appears as a brilliant object against the cold, pre-dawn sky, while the fire control computer calculates lead and elevation automatically. When those cannons discharge, the cab shudders from both barrels, arriving as unified vibration transmitted through the gunner's boots. The mathematics prove unforgiving. A drone traveling 160 kilometers per hour spends approximately 90 seconds inside the gun's effective range, requiring perhaps 2 of those seconds to achieve a hit. The blue searchlight beams sweeping the approach simplify his work considerably, washing out the low drone's sensors and rendering it brilliant against the darkness. For the ridge crew, that represented the straightforward engagement, a slow, stable target barely above water, precisely the scenario this turret was positioned here to counter. The crew is finally deploying the capabilities the budget office claimed they'd never require, and it performed exactly as promised. Then the turret pivots upward after the high-altitude drone, barrels elevating, tracking, holding steady, and refraining from firing, because the cannon that just shredded its wingmate maxes out at 3,000 meters altitude, and this target hovers 1,000 meters above that ceiling. The crew possesses a missile reaching that altitude. The 57E6 extends to 20 kilometers range and 15,000 meters elevation. What they lack is an available launch channel. The fire solution remains committed to the wreckage settling into the water below. Before the system can cycle to a fresh target, the drone executes the maneuver that concludes the argument. It noses downward and descends past the ridgeline into a harbor bowl that the launcher cannot fire into without sending rounds through the city stacked behind it. Skilled crew, appropriate system, unfortunate geometry. The tactical planner who sketched those 2 altitude bands on a Ukrainian whiteboard understood this reality beforehand. The swarm wasn't divided to encompass greater area. It was divided so every defensive gun on this coastline would dedicate the morning to engaging the single object it cannot defeat. The low formation bypasses long-range missiles by operating beneath the radar horizon, while the high formation defeats guns by residing above their maximum elevation. The Panzer commander cannot pursue the drone downward, but he can alert everyone below to its location. He broadcasts on the net. All positions, single drone descending into harbor, northern sector, weapons free. 4 minutes remaining, the drone transits inside the bowl, and the entire city opens fire. 3 minutes remaining, 7 kilometers from the piers, the hills and rooftops erupt together. Tracer fire rakes downward toward the water from both the ridge and the city. Heavy machine guns, aged anti-aircraft cannons, 23mm mounts mounted on truck chassis. Cold War-era hardware resurrected against plywood. Spent cartridge casings rain off rooftops into the streets. Down in those streets, every burst arrives dual times. Once from the water, once from the ridge approximately half a second later. Notice where the tracers originate, and the silence pattern becomes logical. Everything concentrates downhill from the high ground, with nothing originating from the water direction. The same harbor sheltering the fleet becomes the harbor restricting its firepower. 340,000 residents occupy the slopes behind the harbor alongside tankers, a grain facility, and warships moored bow to stern ahead. The hillside positions can strafe the sea indefinitely. The ships cannot engage across the harbor without hitting one another and the city beyond. The fleet, therefore, holds its fire and depends on the hills to accomplish the task. Somewhere on a bridge wing, an officer has his thumb positioned on a trigger he is permitted to activate. Behind the dozen sit apartment complexes. His thumb remains stationary. It's the day's strangest scene. A combat fleet maintaining silence while the city above engages in the battle. Half the population wakes now, smartphones raised, recording from balconies, because contemporary naval warfare demands a viral light show before smoke dissipates. The gunner's challenge becomes arithmetic once more. A target resembling a kayak crossing at 160 kilometers per hour allows a hand-aimed gun perhaps several seconds of clear tracking before it vanishes behind a crane or warehouse structure. The drone advances through the tracer streams while those streams keep missing. Not from negligence among the shooters, but because geometry favors the drone, and every person squeezing a trigger feels that disadvantage. 2 minutes remaining. Then something surprising unfolds. Brilliant blue laser beams spike upward from the water and sweep onto the drone. Vivid, oscillating, luminous enough to project reflections across the entire harbor, pinning it within light. The drone doesn't even waver. It bores straight down the beam, as though the light produces no effect whatsoever. What just swept across that drone and generated absolutely zero result is Russia's newest anti-drone system. Examine the emitter bank along the shoreline, a cluster of projectors sweeping the approach like an inverted lighthouse. It isn't attempting to incinerate the aircraft. It's attempting to blind it. Blue laser dazzlers calibrated to 445 nanometers, constructed from inexpensive commercial diodes, directed at the electro-optical sensor mounted on most attack drones. Standard silicon sensors exhibit extreme susceptibility to blue light within that wavelength. Sufficiently intense illumination through the lens causes the image to wash entirely white, equivalent to a camera flash detonating an inch before your eyes. Eliminate the camera feed, and you eliminate the operator, sending the drone off course until it plunges seaward. The crew controlling those emitters hasn't discovered yet that they're aiming at a sensor this drone doesn't possess. In the gray morning light, the beams appear nearly elegant, resembling blue cables swung repetitively across the hazy bay. From a distance, a port mounting a furious technical defense. Up close, against this particular aircraft, pure theater. This drone doesn't perceive the world through color wavelengths. Its seeker operates in the infrared spectrum, heat detection through an entirely separate optical system. You cannot blind an infrared sensor using visible spectrum illumination, any more than you can silence a person with a flashlight. Wrong spectrum, wrong sensor. Factor in morning fog scattering the beams across the water, and the drone almost certainly flies toward a pre-programmed coordinate regardless, containing no camera feed to blind anyway. Russia's newest system performs for an audience incapable of witnessing it. That factory floor decision from months prior, selecting a thermal seeker rather than an electro-optical camera, just justified itself completely. An entire coastal defensive line equipped with laser emitters sweeping the sky toward absolutely nothing. Personally, I think this deserves more attention. One engineering choice determined before anyone identified which harbor this drone would target, yet an entire defensive infrastructure became obsolete. Still, that thermal eye now encounters a complication nobody predicted. The Shestkaras fires currently discharge scorching smoke across the harbor. Artificial suns blooming in the only light spectrum this drone recognizes. Every defensive layer the swarm defeated today brightened the sky further, heated it further, complicated it further. A single layer remains between the drone and its designated target, a warship older than every defender aboard her. And the drone must locate her through smoke its own forces generated. Should the seeker chase one of those heat sources, the warhead splashes down 100 meters short, rendering the morning pointless. 1 minute remaining, 2,500 meters distance. The drone angles into its terminal descent. Engine note intensifies. Tracers continue climbing past it, the seeker absorbing a harbor that burns. Smoke plumes expand across the frame edges, water registering cold and black. A burning fuel facility radiates heat universally. A warship radiates heat in geometric patterns. The seeker doesn't pursue maximum brightness in the harbor. It hunts thermal signature matching a ship's configuration. And directly ahead, pinned between fire and water, a warm gray shape rests at her moorings, precisely where the operational blueprint indicated. The frigate Petlivi, machinery glowing, superstructure brilliant, unmistakable against the dark sea, regardless of artificial suns. Within 60 seconds, more than 100 pounds of explosive payload contacts a warship designed 40 years before anyone envisioned the projectile carrying it. The only response rising upward consists of rifle fire. Muzzle flashes flicker along the deck rail. Sailors discharging weapons at a speck within a smoke-obscured sky. Close enough currently that topside crews hear it beneath the gunfire. A lawnmower engine at full throttle, growing louder. 30 seconds remain. No missile launches from the vessel. No single gun rotates. Absolutely nothing. That silence tells the complete narrative, and if you examine the ship, you'll recognize why. Petlivi represents a Krivak-class frigate afloat anywhere, commissioned in April 1981. Her air defense systems predate the personal computer epoch. Her original design targeted NATO submarines through cold waters. She continues operations because the fleet has depleted available hulls. Her missile apparatus constitutes an OSA-M, NATO designation SA-N-4, Gecko. a 1960s platform incapable of rotating sufficiently to intercept the drone. Once this near, it's within the missile's minimum engagement distance, preventing any shot. The twin AK-100 deck cannons, positioned aft, discharge 100mm shells against maritime and aerial targets. But their fire control systems never anticipated tracking something this diminutive, this rapid, this proximate. Additionally, she carries zero close-in weapon capability, entirely absent. Contemporary warships maintain a goalkeeper for precisely this scenario, a radar-commanded Gatling system that activates independently and saturates the final temporal window with a metal barrage. The Krivak II predates that entire technological concept, a stronghold without gate protection. 45 years at sea, with nothing installed capable of countering what descends now. 10 seconds. The seeker maintains lock through glare, tracer rounds, and rifle fire, the target swelling until it dominates the entire display. Impact immediately below the railing. Static. Elsewhere across the bay, the gun cruiser continues dispensing tracer fire at empty sky the drone abandoned 30 seconds prior. And the Russian Navy's most elderly frigate smolders at her moorings within the harbor that supposedly remained unreachable. The fleet previously evacuated from Sevastopol. No alternative harbor exists. If you appreciated this presentation, then watch this footage depicting Ukraine converting that additional Russian vessel into the Black Sea's latest artificial reef. Farewell.